The call came at 7:18 a.m., just as I was tying my son's shoes. "Dad, you're pulling too tight," Ethan complained, wobbling on one foot in the kitchen of our small Milwaukee townhouse. "Hold still," I said, smiling despite the knot in my stomach. Mornings were always a race. Coffee cooling on the counter, the hum of the refrigerator, the quiet comfort of routine. I'd lived inside this rhythm for 12 years, ever since his mother left. It was simple, predictable, safe. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. "Go grab your backpack," I told Ethan, reaching for the phone. "This is Daniel Harris," a man's voice said the moment I answered. Calm, measured, professional. "I'm with the Milwaukee Police Department, Mr. Cole. We need you to come down to the station this morning." This about my son?" A pause. Just long enough to make my heart stumble. "Your son is fine, sir. This is about your daughter." I laughed softly, reflexively, the way you do when someone makes a mistake that's almost funny. "You've got the wrong person. I don't have a daughter. I have one child, my son." Silence stretched across the line. Then, "Mr. Cole, please come to the station. If you can't, we'll send officers to you." The way he said it, careful, deliberate, made my skin prickle. "I'll be there," I said. I hung up and stood there staring at the wall, the phone heavy in my hand. "Dad," Ethan called from the hallway. "What's nothing?" I said too quickly. "Change of plans. You're going to school with Mrs. What? Why? I've got work stuff." That wasn't a lie. Not exactly. I kissed the top of his head, grabbed my jacket, and stepped out into the cold October morning, my mind already unraveling. At the station, they led me into a small conference room that smelled like old coffee and disinfectant. Gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs. Detective Harris came in with a woman I didn't recognize, both of them carrying the same quiet gravity. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Cole," Harris said, sitting across from me. "I know this is confusing." "You said daughter," I replied. "I think you need to explain that." He slid a photograph across the table. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared at the edge of it, the way it rested so casually between us. "Go ahead," he said. My fingers trembled as I pulled it closer. The room tilted. The woman in the photo looked to be in her early 20s. Dark hair pulled back, serious eyes, a faint scar above her left eyebrow. But it wasn't her age or expression that knocked the breath out of me. It was her face, my son's face. The same eyes, the same nose, the same curve of the mouth. It was like someone had taken Ethan and aged him forward a decade, softened the jawline, added longer hair. That's impossible," I whispered. "Her name is Lily Cole." Harris said, "Quite too. She was reported missing 3 days ago." I pushed the photo away. "No, I don't know who that is. My wife and I had one child. One, a boy." The female officer leaned forward gently. "Mr. Cole, records show Lily was born the same day as your son. Twin delivery." My chest felt hollow. "My wife told me the baby didn't survive. She said there were complications. That she died hours after birth." Harris nodded. "We've heard that before." "What do you mean you've heard before?" My voice cracked. He opened a folder and turned it toward me. "Hospital records. Birth certificates. Adoption documents. The female infant was released 3 days after delivery," he said. "Placed for private adoption." My hands shook so badly I had to press them flat against the table. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that I've had a daughter for 22 years, and I never knew?" "Yes, sir." The room went quiet except for the buzz of the overhead lights. "She disappeared 3 days ago," Harris continued. "Her apartment showed signs of a struggle. Her phone and laptop were taken. But we found something." He slid another item across the table. A worn leather notebook. "She'd been searching for her biological family," he said. "Your name was written inside." I swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," Harris said, meeting my eyes, "the last person she met before she vanished was your ex-wife." The world collapsed inward. "Her name was Claire," I said automatically. "She left when Ethan was 6 months old. I haven't seen her since." "She goes by Claire Bennett now," the female officer said. "Married name." Harris closed the folder. "Mr. Cole, we believe Lily confronted her birth mother. Shortly after, she disappeared." I stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You think my ex-wife did something to her?" "We think she knows more than she's saying." "And where is my daughter now?" I demanded. "We're working on that," Harris replied. "But we need you to stay out of this." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You just told me I've had a daughter for 22 years and she's missing. And you want me to sit at home?" Harris's voice hardened. "If you interfere, you could put her in more danger." I stared at the photograph again. "My daughter," I walked out of the station in a daze, my life split cleanly into before and after. Ethan was waiting for me at home, sitting at the kitchen table with his homework spread out, Mrs. Turner gone. "You're back early," he said. "Everything okay?" I sat across from him, studying his face, really looking. "Then," I said, "do you know what twins are?" He frowned. "Yeah, like two babies at once. Do you remember ever wishing you had a sister?" He shrugged. I took a breath that felt like glass in my lungs. "You do," I said. "You have a sister?" His laugh mirrored mine from that morning. "That's not funny." I slid the photo across the table. His smile faded. His fingers brushed his own cheek, his eyes widening. "She looks like me," he whispered. "That's because she is like you," I said. "Her name is Lily. She's your twin." The color drained from his face. "You're serious?" I nodded. "She's missing." The silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever known. I knew something was wrong. Ethan said quietly after a long moment. "I've been feeling off. Like something's missing." I didn't tell him about the knot that had lived in my chest for years, the grief that never quite made sense. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I sat alone in dark and made a decision. If the police weren't moving fast enough, I would. I called the one person I trusted completely. Mark Sullivan had been my best friend since high school. A former investigative journalist turned private consultant. He answered on the second ring. "Dan," he said. "I need your help." By midnight, Mark was sitting at my kitchen table, files spread out, his expression grim as I told him everything. "They separated twins," he said finally. "That's not common. Someone wanted that girl gone. And now she's missing," I said. "And her mother's involved." Mark leaned back. "Then we start with the mother. Claire Bennett lived in a quiet suburb outside the city. A perfect house. White fence. Warm lights glowing through the windows. Too perfect." Mark stayed in the car while I approached the door. My heart pounded as I knocked. Claire opened it wearing a silk robe, her hair styled, her face frozen in polite surprise. "Daniel," she said. "This is unexpected. You took my daughter." I said flatly. Her smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lily," I said. "She's missing. The police told me everything." Her eyes flickered, just for a second. "She came to see me," Claire said, fuzz angry, confused. I tried to calm her down. "And then?" I pressed. "She left." I stepped closer. "You lied to me for 22 years, you don't get to lie now." Her face hardened. "You wouldn't have understood. I did what I had to do." "For who?" I demanded. "You." She said nothing. Mark called me back to the car before I did something I couldn't take back. "She's hiding something," he said. "And she's not alone." Over the next 48 hours, we uncovered pieces of a puzzle that made my blood run cold. Claire's husband. His business dealings. Shell companies. A pattern of people who crossed him disappearing. And one abandoned property on the edge of the city. A warehouse. Ethan hadn't said much since learning the truth. But that night, as we sat poring over to his chest. "She's close," he said suddenly. "I don't know how I know. But she's scared." I looked at my son, my children, and felt something fierce ignite inside me. We went to the warehouse just after midnight. The air was cold, the building dark and silent. Inside, the smell of damp concrete and oil filled my lungs. We moved quietly, following a narrow staircase down into the basement. A door at the far end stood slightly ajar. "Lily," I whispered. A weak voice answered. "Dad." I ran. She was thinner than in the photo. Bruised, exhausted, but alive. She looked up at me. Tears streaming down her face. "I knew you'd come." I dropped to my knees, pulling her into my arms. 22 years of loss collapsing into one moment of unbearable relief. The police arrived minutes later. Claire and her husband were arrested the next morning. Weeks passed in a blur of statements, hospital visits, and quiet conversations that stitched our shattered family together. One evening, months later, we sat around the dinner table, Ethan and Lily arguing over music, laughter filling the space that grief once occupied. I watched them and thought about the lie that stole 22 years from us. And the truth that brought us home. Some wounds never fully heal. But some truths, once spoken, give you back more than you ever thought you'd lost. And every morning now, when I tie Ethan's shoes or watch Lily smile across the table, I remember this. Never accept a story that silences your instincts. Never let fear replace truth. And never stop looking for the people who belong to you, even when the world tells you they're gone. The weeks that followed felt unreal, like we were living inside someone else's life. Lily stayed at the hospital for 5 days, dehydration, bruised ribs, a mild concussion. The doctor said she was lucky. I didn't feel lucky, I felt angry at myself, at Claire. At a system that allowed a child to be erased so cleanly. The first night she was cleared to leave, I brought her home. Our home. She stood in the doorway for a long time, clutching a borrowed coat, her eyes moving slowly over the living room, the framed photos of Ethan growing up, the scuffed hardwood floors, the old couch she'd never sat on but somehow recognized. "This is where I should have grown up," she said softly. I swallowed. If I'd known, even suspected. She shook her head gently. "You didn't know." She made sure of that. Ethan hovered nearby, unsure where to stand, how to exist in this new reality. He'd always been confident, grounded. Now he seemed unmoored, like gravity had shifted. "You snore," Lily said suddenly, looking at him. Ethan blinked. "What? You snore?" she repeated. "I used to hear it in my dreams. I didn't know who it was, but it was always there." A strange laugh escaped him, half disbelief, half wonder. "You talk in your sleep," he said back, full conversations. She smiled at him then, a real smile, the first one I'd seen. Something fragile but powerful settled into place between. That night, none of us slept much. We sat in the living room until dawn, talking in fragments. Safe topics at first. School, music, food preferences, the kind of things strangers ask when they want to pretend they're not strangers. But eventually the harder questions came. "Why did she keep me?" Lily asked quietly, staring at her hands. "Why him and not me?" I felt Ethan tense beside me. "She didn't keep either of you for the right reasons," I said carefully. "What she did wasn't about love. It was about control." Lily nodded slowly. "Her husband knew. He helped her. They thought I was a liability," Ethan said sharply. Lily looked at him, eyes glistening. "So were you." That was the moment they really became siblings. Not because of blood, but because they chose each other. The investigation moved fast after the arrests. Once the truth cracked open, it poured out. Claire's husband took a plea deal. Gave names, locations, accounts. The warehouse wasn't the first place they'd used. Just the latest. Lily had been methodical, brave in a way that still humbles me. She documented everything, financial records, recordings, and written notes hidden in the lining of her bag. She knew confronting Claire was dangerous. She did it anyway. She thought if she could just get her to admit it, Detective Harris told me later, would have enough. She was right. The trial lasted 6 weeks. I sat behind Lily every day, my presence a quiet promise. Ethan came when he could, squeezing her hand during testimony. Claire never looked at me. Not once. When the verdict came back guilty on all charges, Lily didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and breathed. Like someone finally setting down a weight they'd been carrying too long. Afterward, outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Microphones hovered inches from our faces. "Do you forgive your mother?" one of them asked Lily. She paused. "I don't owe her forgiveness," she said calmly. "I owe myself peace." That clip went everywhere. Life didn't become easy after that. Healing is quieter than justice. Slower. Less dramatic. Lily had nightmares. Panic attacks. Days when she couldn't stand to be alone. Ethan struggled too, anger bubbling up at unexpected moments, grief for a sister he'd lost before he ever knew her. We started therapy together. Family sessions, individual ones. Some days felt like progress, others felt like starting over. But we kept showing up. 6 months later, Lily enrolled in a graduate program for social work. She said she wanted to help people who fell through cracks, people like her. Ethan started volunteering at a youth center downtown. If someone had asked the right questions earlier, he told me once, maybe none of this would have happened. I went back to my routines. Work, cooking dinner, fixing things around the house. But everything felt different now, fuller, heavier, more honest. One evening, I found Lily in the garage, going through an old box of photos I'd pulled down from the attic. Pictures of Ethan as a baby. His first steps. Birthday cakes. She held one up, her eyes wet. "This should have been me too." I sat beside her. "We can't get those years back," I said. "But we can choose what we do with the ones we have." She nodded, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Dad," she asked after a moment. "Even if you'd known, even if you'd tried, she would have fought you. Hard." "I know," I said, "but I still wish I'd asked more questions." "So do I," she said softly. "About a lot of things." Spring came late that year. The first warm day. We ate dinner outside on the back porch. The air smelled like cut grass and possibility. Ethan was telling some ridiculous story about a kid at the youth center. Lily laughed, really laughed, throwing her head back. I watched them and felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Whole, not because everything was fixed. Not because the past didn't matter. But because the truth had finally made room for us to live honestly. I think about that phone call sometimes. About how close I came to ignoring it. About how many lives hinge on moments like that, small decisions that feel inconvenient or impossible. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the truth doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it tears your life apart before it puts it back together. But if you listen, really listen, when something feels wrong, you might just find what was gone forever, waiting for you to come home. A year passed. Not quietly, not without setbacks, but steadily. The house learned new rhythms. Lily claimed the spare bedroom, then repainted it a soft gray that reminded her of rain. Ethan started leaving his door open at night again, the way he had when he was younger. Sometimes I'd hear them talking in low voices long after midnight. Sharing things twins share when they finally have the chance, memories that didn't overlap, pain that somehow did. On the anniversary of the day Lily was found, we drove out to Lake Michigan. It was overcast, the water dark and restless. Lily stood at the edge for a long time, her hands in her pockets. "I used to imagine you," she said without looking at me. "I'd picture a man who built things, I don't know why. Someone steady." My throat tightened. "I am steady," I said, "when I'm also flawed. I trusted when I should have questioned." She turned to me then. "That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Ethan skipped a stone across the water. "You're both annoying," he said, "but I'm glad you're mine." We laughed, the sound carried away by the wind. Later that year, Lily invited us to a small ceremony at her university. She was receiving an award for her work with survivors of family abuse. When her name was called, she looked out into the audience and found us immediately. She smiled like she knew exactly where she belonged. Afterward, she hugged me tightly. "You showed up," she said. "That matters more than anything." I still think about the years we lost. About the birthdays that went unwitnessed, the scraped knees I never kissed, the questions she asked into the dark without answers. Grief doesn't disappear just because joy arrives. They coexist, they have to. But if I've learned anything, it's that the truth, no matter how late it comes, has a way of restoring what lies tried to erase. Sometimes, late at night, I walk past Lily's room and hear her breathing. Steady and alive, and I feel something close to reverence. For second chances, for hard questions finally asked. For the quiet miracle of finding your child when you thought they were gone forever. And every morning, when the house wakes and the coffee brews and my children move through the space we now share, I remember this. The truth may break your heart. And it can also give it back to you, stronger, fuller, and finally whole. There are moments now, small, ordinary moments, that stop me in my tracks. Like the first time Lily burned dinner. She stood at the smoking pan, mortified. I followed the recipe exactly. Ethan leaned against the counter, grinning. "Welcome to the family. Dad once set off the smoke alarm, boiling water." That was one time. I protested. They laughed, and I realized something then. This was how healing sounded. Not speeches, not verdicts, laughter over ruined meals, complaints about chores, arguments over whose turn it was to take out the trash. Normal. The kind of normal I never knew I was missing. Lily Stum had questions. She'd sit across from me at the kitchen table, her mug growing cold. "Did you ever think about her?" she asked once. "The baby you were told you lost." "Every day," I answered honestly. I imagined who she might have been. I wondered what she would have liked. I wondered if she would have had your eyes. She smiled sadly. "I always wondered why I felt incomplete. Like there was a room in my life I couldn't access." Ethan looked between us. "I thought that was just being human." "Maybe it is," Lily said. "Or maybe some of us just lose pieces and don't know where they went." The courts ordered restitution, counseling, community service. Words that sound neat on paper but don't quite touch the damage done. Claire was sentenced to 28 years. Her husband received 35. When I heard the numbers, I felt nothing, no relief, no triumph, just quiet. I didn't need them to suffer. I needed my daughter back. One afternoon, months later, I received a letter in the mail, no return address. The handwriting was familiar even after all these years. "Claire," I didn't open it right away. I held it in my hands, the weight of it heavier than it should have. That night, after Lily and Ethan had gone to bed, I finally unfolded the page. It was 3 paragraphs long. She wrote about fear, about pressure, about choosing what she thought was survival. She apologized, not well, not fully, but she apologized. At the bottom, she'd written, "I hope one day you can tell her I was sorry." I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. The next morning, Lily found it on the counter. "You don't have to read it," I said quickly. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "I don't want her words," she said. "I want my life." I nodded, relief and pride tangling in my chest. We burned the letter together that evening in the fireplace. Watched it curl and blacken and disappear. Some things don't deserve to be carried forward. Ethan graduated high school the following spring. Lily sat in the front row beside me, clapping louder than anyone. When his name was called, he searched the crowd and found us both. Afterward, he wrapped his arms around Lily. "I don't know how I did anything without you," he said. She laughed. "You did, you just don't have to anymore." That summer we took our first family trip, nothing extravagant. A rented cabin near a quiet lake. No cell service, just water, trees, and time. One night, we sat around a fire as the sky filled with stars. Lily stared upward, tears shining in her eyes. "I used to think God forgot me," she said softly. "That I was extra." I reached for her hand. "You were never forgotten. You were hidden." Ethan poked the fire. "You're not extra," he said. "You're the missing half." She laughed through her tears. "You're cheesy." "Genetic," he replied. I watched the flames dance and thought about how close I came to never knowing this version of my life. How easily the truth could have stayed buried. There's a lie people tell themselves, that asking questions makes things worse. That digging invites pain. But silence doesn't protect you. It just delays the moment you have to face what was always there. If you're listening to this and something in your life doesn't add up, if a story feels incomplete, if grief doesn't make sense, if your instincts whisper when everyone else tells you to be quiet, listen, ask. Because the truth, even when it arrives late, still has the power to bring people home. I know. Every morning, I wake up in a house that once held only half my family. Now it holds us all. And that is more than I ever thought I'd have again. Years have a way of softening the sharpest edges. Not erasing them. Just rounding them enough that you can touch the memory without bleeding. By the time Ethan turned 25, Lily had become a constant in our lives in ways that felt almost impossible to remember as new. She knew where everything was kept. She complained about the loose floorboard by the stairs. She argued with Ethan about music volume and borrowed my jacket without asking. Belonging, I learned, isn't a moment, it's repetition. One Sunday morning I woke early to the sound of voices in the kitchen. I stayed in bed listening. "You always do that," Lily said. "Do what?" "Cut the bread unevenly. It tastes the same." "It absolutely does not." I smiled into my pillow. Later that day Lily asked if I'd walk with her. We took the long route through the neighborhood. Past houses that had watched my life unfold, without knowing the truth hidden inside it. "Do you ever think about who you'd be if I hadn't come back?" she asked. I considered it. "Think I'd still be alive," I said. "But I wouldn't be whole." She nodded. "I think about who I'd be if I'd never found you. That scares me." "You found us," I corrected gently. "You did the hard part." She stopped walking and looked at me. "I needed you to come for me." "I would have," I said without hesitation. "Even if it took my whole life." Her eyes filled, but she smiled. "I know. That winter." Lily spoke at a conference for adoptees and reunified families. She stood on a stage under bright lights and told her story, not the crime, not the trial, but the years of quiet confusion. The feeling of being loved but displaced, the ache without a name. Afterward, people lined up to talk to her. Mothers, fathers, adult children, some crying, some just holding her hand. Ethan watched from the back of the room, his jaw tight. "She's brave," he said later. "She always was," I replied. "But she shouldn't have had to be." "No," I agreed. "But she turned it into something that helps others." That spring, I found myself back at the hospital where Ethan and Lily were born. A routine checkup had brought me there, but standing in that hallway felt different now. Heavier. I paused outside the maternity wing, memories pressing in. Claire's face. The doctor's voice. The moment my world split in two without me knowing. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the anger fully. Not explosive, just deep. I didn't stay long. Some places are meant to be left behind. On Lily's 24th birthday, we threw a small party in the backyard. Strom made cake. Ethan insisted on grilling and nearly set the fence on fire. As we sang, Lily closed her eyes, hands pressed together. "What did you wish for?" and asked after she blew out the candles. She shrugged. "Nothing new, just this." Exactly this. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone on the porch. The air was warm, the house quiet behind me. I thought about the call that started everything. About how close I came to never answering. About how many lives pivot on moments that seem ordinary at the time. I don't tell this story because it's dramatic. I tell it because it's real. Because someone is being told a version of the truth that doesn't sit right in their chest. Someone is carrying grief that feels unfinished. Someone is accepting silence because it feels safer than asking. It isn't. Truth can hurt, But lies steal years. I lost 22 of them. And I was lucky enough to get my daughter back anyway. Not everyone does. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. Pay attention to the quiet questions that don't go away. Trust the feeling that something is missing. And never assume the story you were given is the whole one. Sometimes, the person you're grieving is still out there. Waiting, just like Lily was. And just like we found each other, at last. Now, when people ask me how I survived it all, I don't give them a dramatic answer. I don't talk about strength or resilience or fate. I tell them the truth. I survived because the truth finally found its way back to me. Because my daughter was brave enough to ask the questions I never did. Because my son was open enough to make space for a sister he never knew existed. Because, when the lie finally cracked, we chose not to look away. There are still hard days. There are still moments when Lily goes quiet, when Ethan grows distant. When the weight of what was stolen presses down on all of us at once. Healing doesn't erase the past. It teaches you how to carry it without letting it crush you. Some nights I walk through the house after everyone's asleep. I check the doors. Turn off lights. Pause outside their rooms. 2 doors now. 2 steady breaths. And every time, the same thought hits me with quiet force. This almost didn't happen. If I had ignored that call, if Lily had stayed silent, if fear had won, but it didn't. Truth has a way of surviving, even when buried, even when denied for decades. It waits. Patient. Unyielding. And when it finally comes to light, it doesn't just expose what was wrong. It gives back what was lost. I don't get the years I missed with my daughter. I don't get to rewrite the past. But I get every morning now, every argument, every laugh, every ordinary moment that once felt impossible. I get my children. And that is more than enough. So if you're listening to this and something in your life doesn't quite make sense, if a story feels incomplete, if grief lingers without answers, if your instincts keep knocking, don't ignore them. Ask the hard question, demand the truth. Follow the feeling that refuses to let you go. Because sometimes on the other side of that fear, though, is family.